Welcome everybody. Hello my beautiful people. We're back with another Poker Mind Expansion episode. So in the previous few episodes we've been talking about some of the methodologies to make self-realization, to expand our mind, to become enlightened, to be in samadhi through the religious course. So we have been talking about the summit and means to get there, methods to get there through the methodologies that the ancient religions have set up. Now today I'm going to discuss it from a different vantage point, taking another path of the top of the mountain. And I want to discuss some of the great philosophers in the Enlightenment era and some of their works. And rather than quoting Jesus Christ or Gautama Siddhartha or Ramana Maharshi, I'm going to quote some great philosophers, and we're going to talk about mind expansion from a different angle. One of the things that Gautama did not answer was questions about God. And when he would answer questions going from village to village, the disciples who found people with questions and allowed them to ask made sure that there were no questions about God. He had a list of 10 questions which he said were not allowed to be asked, because these questions cannot be answered linguistically. What is important is our spiritual practice. And I would like to say that it's nothing to do with spirituality. It's just the way that it is framed. And in fact, spirituality is about remembering the truth of what we are, which is very deep. But in fact, in the ultimate truth, it is not spiritual and it is not unspiritual. It transcends the entire idea. Now, they are not metaphysical ideas that we are going to talk about in this episode. We are going to talk about real practical methods. And we are also going to talk about ideas throughout history and strategies which have been used to make man think in a very one-dimensional way. And when I talk about God, I want to be very clear that when I say God, I do not mean a finite individual man with a particular character. It's very important to understand that when I say God, I am talking about the intelligence of the universe. I am talking about the entire existence without any duality. I am talking about the absolute. So when I refer to God, please remember, do not believe in a psychological character of someone in the sky that is doing particular things. Absolutely, if that is your belief, beautiful. But this discourse is going to aim to see God through the lens that Jesus Christ saw him when he said that I and my Father are one. We're going to look at it through the lens of philosophy and try to understand that this dream of a personal God is absolutely limited. It's absolutely limiting because it gives him a personality. The entire existence is absolutely intelligent. There's not a fraction of this existence that is unintelligent. So it is not possible to box God into a particular idea or ideology. The existence gives us an unlimited, unpersonal expanse of infinite intelligence. But a limited personal God is not what we wake up to. God has been conceived by all the religions, whether they are monotheistic or polytheistic. All the religions have conceived of a man that is in control of everything. But the mind needs certainty, and the mind needs answers, and to put things in boxes. Because the mind cannot handle uncertainty. Hence, it creates pre-made questions. Hence, it creates pre-made answers, and goes around and tries to ask questions that lead to the pre-made answers. And when they don't align with the conditionings of the current societal structure, we are taught to react as if we have no free will of our own. Someone is walking down a subway and a stranger says, "Oh man, you didn't tie your shoes, watch out." And a stranger shouts, "Yo, watch where you're going, don't run into me." We almost collided. And I have a reaction like, "Oh man, this guy is trying to harm me, he's trying to do something to me." But this is my own internal experience. This man cannot superimpose negative emotions inside of me. I have to be dreaming in order for that to be the case. This is why we have to expand our mind to realize that the source of our anguish, the source of our pain, is not coming from a bad beat on the river, and it is not coming from our opponent being better than us. It is a derivative of us not understanding ourselves and our entirety, because it is so difficult to understand the vast depth that we are. The mind has to put God into a box, because the mind must try to understand the entirety of existence. But you cannot understand something directly. You can only understand yourself directly. You can get knowledge about the way that a polar bear communicates and gets its food in the Arctic, in the ways that they communicate and hunt together. The language is magnificent. They are very intelligent animals. We can study 30 years, but we are only gathering knowledge about these polar bears. We are not the polar bears. We cannot directly know or understand how they experience life, because we are not using the same biological machinery. But the human mind dreams, and it dreams that it knows the other. And when it comes to poker, it's very important that we look at the fact that when we get knowledge of ourselves, it certainly leads to knowledge of others. But when we get knowledge of ourselves, it does not lead to the other having knowledge of us. The most powerful knowledge that we can collect and gather is knowledge of our own being, because we are fragmented and we do not know the truth. Because we are told that collecting knowledge of ideas, of objects outside of our five sense perceptions are the way to improve. But poker is not an existential thing. Poker is an idea. Poker is a set of rules, a set of agreements. Poker exists as a collection of memories within our brain. Do we think we are separate from our brain? Have we sat down logically and asked ourselves how we are separate from poker? It's important not to underestimate the intelligence that we have, just because the society has reduced 98% of people to factory workers, to people working a 9 to 5. Poker players are their own boss. They are not slaves. But in order to continue in the revolution of AI, it takes a mind that is very strong, because this is an era where we are taught to memorize solutions from Pio Solver. And the intelligent ones understand. But the problem is that the new poker player coming into the game will go on Google and look for training sites for poker, how to get better. And he will be led to one of these training sites. And they're not going to teach this beginning poker player from first principle. They're not going to teach him about how to think critically. They're going to give him cookie cutter answers in order for him to move up in stakes and feel like he is improving. The problem is that when he gets to a certain point where all of his tricks are the same as his opposition and he cannot improve, he cannot get past the ceiling, he will have realized, in fact, he may not have realized that he messed up with the initial decision to go to the training sites. He may believe that it is correct, and if he continues to train more and more, that he will get better without expanding the strategic framework in which he thinks about the endless possibilities of poker. But he wants solutions to alleviate him of pain. He doesn't like the pain of downswings. But in fact, all pains of downswings are just a dream. They are absolutely experienced. They are not fake. But in mind expansion, there are no downswings as far as emotions are concerned. There are only numbers on a screen, and that is the reality. But the unexpanded mind uses the downswing and creates a reminder system about how we need to adjust our behavior because we've done something wrong. Because deep down we believe that when we lose we are doing something wrong. And the mind that is compartmentalized and cannot believe that its attachment to money and how it plays in game are somehow separate. Now they can be for the seasoned poker players, but have you seen people play differently at the table because of the amount of money that they have in their wallet? Are they aware of that? Or are they lying to themselves because it would cause them too much pain to admit, I might not be even making money in this game because I'm playing so scared and I'm overfolding rivers. And it might be apparent that I'm playing scared and they might try to bluff me more. And I might go from normally a 3 BB winner to a negative 3 BB winner. Or I might go from a 4 BB winner to a break-even player. Because I'm playing a little bit too nitty pre, I'm folding a little bit too many flops, I'm definitely folding too much on the river, I'm calling turn a bit too much. They understand my biggest fear is to lose my entire stack, so they're going to triple me and get me into these nodes, and I'm going to fold too much. And this is going to cost a lot of EV. But I'm never going to believe any of that, even if that's the reality, because it's too painful. Because the mind wants to be able to box in everything. It creates a personal God. So all the inconsistencies can vanish, and it can believe that all the inconsistencies in the multi-dimensional nature of life, and specifically in poker, when we are getting check raised on a7-2, and we fear that they are always going to have it. But when we have 2-5 suited and we face a bet, we feel that they are always going to call down because it's obvious that we have 2-5. We have to see our own inconsistencies directly. But God was created because man has a lot of psychological pain when he feels uncertainty. And this is the same fear, this is the same pain that a poker player feels today. These are not separate things. It is the same operating system which is creating this experience that we are using. The fact is that the personal God is founded on beliefs upon beliefs on beliefs, which are lies upon lies upon lies. And with this small first lie, rather than realizing that God is the totality of existence, religions make it a very limited character, and they don't understand that the infinite is total, it is absolute, and you cannot get more power out of a personal God. But lies, like talking to ourselves through prayer and dreaming about a personal God without realizing that we are talking to ourselves, and we are begging ourselves, please wake up, please remember the truth, please. But because we don't feel good enough, we have to throw it on a personal God. And why don't we feel good enough? Because we have inherited this belief structure. But we are good enough because we have the intelligence of this existence. But the society does not want us to open the box of what we are. When you create this lie, you create temples, statues, mosques. You create killing in the name of your personal God, who detests all other people's personal gods. And this personal God allows you to justify mass murder, genocide, war, sending your own people, your own family, off to war in your personal God's name. It is absolutely absurd, the history of the personal God. And it is completely unfounded. It is like smoke in front of someone's eyes. Because they are the vast expanse of the universe. They are God. They are not separate. But they are dreaming that they are not good enough. Because when you tell someone the same thing hundreds and hundreds of times, that you're not good enough right now, but if you do something in the future to improve, then one day you will be okay. Even though you were perfectly happy for absolutely no reason every minute when you were a child. Until other adults and the world, the society, started to abuse us. And they do it in very subtle strategies. By trying to tell us that we are not allowed to cry. And that our tears are ugly. And that a woman's anger is not beautiful. Her expression, her honesty, not wearing a mask, but saying, I don't like that, don't do that. Telling her that she needs to be in a box. It is very ugly to force the mask on the children. But it is what we do, and then we forget that we ourselves are wearing masks in each situation. Poker is the place where we can be ourselves. In fact, many of us have dropped the masks, because if we were wearing masks, we would not have been poker players. Because people in the society do not like gambling. People in the society who are slaves believe that gambling is wrong. So we have been courageous. But it takes a deeper courage to go into ourselves to know who we are. And to question the beliefs of the society. Not only the ones that we disbelieve in. We are not separate from the totality of beliefs in all men. Because in order to understand our opponents, we have to understand how they think. We have to understand the systems of thought through conflict solution. We have to understand what their brain prioritizes when they are on the river. Are they looking out for missed bluffs and overcalling when there are missed draws? Are they folding even though their range is very bluff catcher heavy and he tanks? It's unlikely that he's folding a draw. Is he folding a value hand because he believes that calling a bluff catcher is negative EV? Is he mixing on this river? These questions are very important. But in order to ask these in a very direct and clear way, in a way that gives us meaning in the next context that will arise, we have to be able to expand our consciousness. This is the fundamental principle. The fundamental principle is to know thyself. Without knowing who we are and what we are, it will be a very difficult road. In fact, if our opponents know who we are, we will end up like roadkill, the same way that Stefan 11222 demolishes the children that he plays against. He is a master strategist. They do not get much better than Stefan. What is it that this man does? We will be speaking about Stefan 11222 if people are intelligent in 100 years. We will be seeing the grand strategist that this man is, because he was not convinced by the GTO gods. In 100 years, when people are playing poker and they realized that the beginning players like ourselves were solving the wrong problems because we were interested in using AI to help us solve for zero as opposed to trying to think like grand strategists in multi-dimensions, they will feel sorry for us. But they will see that people like Stefan and Linus and many others understood at high stakes. But it just so happens that people normally follow like sheep. They follow the mass. And the high stakes players will never be honest because they have no incentive. Even if they say that people have got it wrong and they should understand the theory of the game first and they should expand their mind and their consciousness, people will not understand because they will only interpret it through thinking that they have already done something correct. A 25-0 player is listening to Linus Love and he wants to feel good about himself. He's not sitting there thinking about the roadmap of how to get to high stakes because he feels like he's not good enough right now, but he feels like he needs that confidence boost. So Linus Love saying you need to expand your mind. This 25-0 player is like, yeah, man, I've listened to a podcast about that. I'm doing good. He does not strategize and think about how he's going to get better and what he's actually going to implement. Now, we that are playing bigger and we that have stood the test of time within poker understand that it takes a brain that thinks outside the box. But these are the fundamentals. There's a great philosopher. His name is Friedrich Nietzsche. He is a German philosopher and one of the most beautiful men. Now, he had a very negative philosophy, some would say, and in fact he went crazy by the end of his life. So a spiritualist listening to this may say, well, he didn't find consciousness, he didn't wake up. But I would argue that it doesn't matter, because his contribution to understanding the human psyche and understanding God is absolutely fundamental to expanding our minds. Because he had an expanded mind. Even if he did not find samadhi, he thought outside of the box. And he was a true rebel. And poker players that do not want to be like sheep have to think for themselves and increase their ability to think critically. Because the 25-0 player who goes to a poker video and does not like listening to lectures on philosophy has no interest in expanding his mind. Because he goes and watches Doug Polk because he wants to feel like other people relate to him. He wants to feel a sense of connection with the other. But what I say may hurt the ego. But I say learn to have a sense of connection with yourself. But it hurts because we are taught that we need connection with the other. And we do. But in order to be able to truly give love, we have to be able to love ourselves very deeply and give ourselves permission to think outside of the box. But it hurts the ego very much. But poker players are not egoists. Because we go to the casino and we see the recreational player get mad one hand, he lost a hand. And rather than thinking strategically the next hand, he jams all in with pocket fours under the gun for 150 big blinds, saying, well, it's meant to be, that's just how it goes, I lost the last hand. So poker players are not so egoistic. And they are not so delusional. But the man who thinks that I'm not delusional, this other man is more delusional than me, is deluding himself. Because nobody at high stakes is complacent. Everybody at high stakes that has stood the test of time continues to use these methodologies like meditation and mindfulness and thinking about the game for themselves without tools. These kind of people are the truth. These kind of people are the way because they have stood the test of time. And we have a lot to learn from them. So God is not a limited character. God is absolutely unlimited. God is infinite. And God is eternal. There is no beginning and there is no end. Because the existence is continuously expanding to higher peaks and higher peaks of consciousness. God is continuously fathoming depths beyond depths beyond depths. There are skies beyond skies. There are no boundaries to existence. A personal God is absolutely limited, and it is a fiction of the human mind. But we have created God in our own image, because we cannot think of a God that is in our thoughts, because we cannot think of a God. Thought is the barrier to God, because God is. But we have made God in our own image. A very old man, a very big gray beard. Certainly we know that God cannot be a young man, because we think that someone being young means that they're foolish. But in fact, there are a lot of young people who are far more wise than the last generation, and that's how they continue to change humanity and expand their minds. God cannot be a woman. According to every religion, God must be a man, very chauvinistic. But you cannot box God in. You cannot box intelligence in. the very act of trying to box the existence in, is unintelligence. Now, Friedrich Nietzsche was the first man in our history to declare that God is dead, therefore man is free. And it was an absolutely tremendous statement, because it has many implications. I would like to talk about Friedrich Nietzsche because we have a lot to learn in the poker community from such deep thinkers. All the religions that believe that God created the world and also mankind have limited themselves. Now, it is a very interesting idea that Nietzsche spoke about, and Immanuel Kant. Many philosophers in the Enlightenment era spoke about this, that if you are created by someone, then you are only a puppet, and you don't have any soul. If you are created by someone, then he can uncreate you at any moment. He neither asks you whether you want to be created, nor does he ask if you want to be uncreated. God is the greatest dictator. If you accept the fiction that he created the world and he also created mankind. If God is reality, then man is absolutely a slave, a puppet. All the strings are in his hands, even man's life. And there is no question of any enlightenment, no question of any mind expansion, no question of poker mastery. So there's no question of being a Linus Love, of being a Phil Ivey, of being a Tom Dwan, of being a Stefan 11222, of being a True Teller, of being a Kadia 18, of being a Krantz. Because God pulls the strings. You cry, he pulls the strings. You murder someone because he says something bad. Well, he pulled the strings. Someone commits suicide, he pulls the strings. You commit genocide in his name, you pull the strings. The society, the slaves of society, are just puppets, and he is the puppeteer. And then there's no question of sin or virtue. There's no question of sinners or saints. Nothing is good and nothing is bad, because man is only a puppet. And man cannot be responsible for his actions. Responsibility belongs to someone who actually has freedom to act. Either God or freedom can exist, but both cannot exist together. And this is the basic implication of Friedrich Nietzsche's statement. God is dead, therefore man is free. Because these things are mutually exclusive. But the religious-minded are not very good logicians. And no theologian, no founder of any religion has thought about this. That if you accept God as your creator, then you are completely destroying the whole dignity of human consciousness, which is what Jesus Christ tried to tell us 2,000 years ago. Jesus Christ was not the founder of Christianity. Jesus Christ tried to tell the Jews that they are one with existence and they are not separate entities from the whole, and that they had to wake up from the dream. But the Jews were offended, and they called him an egoist, because Jesus said that he is the last Messiah for the Jews, and they should trust him. Now, Jesus did not really believe this, but Jesus understood that this was the language that the believing man used. So he had to go speak the same language. And he said that he and his Father were one, that all man and their Father are one, that all life is one. Jesus was not an egotistical man saying that I and my Father are one, I am God. But he was misinterpreted. He was trying to tell people to wake up to consciousness. But 2,000 years later, people believe that Jesus Christ was a God, and they don't understand that they are carrying the seed of consciousness within them. And you ask them why, and they don't have a real reason. They say, well, I don't want to think I'm so high. And you ask why? What is the presupposition which makes you less than anything else? Who is the one? Do you judge yourself so hard? No, of course, it's for God. This is the point. That this idea destroys the whole effort of mind expansion, of freedom, of being a strategist, because it takes all the responsibility away from the poker player and dishes it out to the training sites, dishes it out to spiritual deities. Friedrich Nietzsche's statement is bound to only get one side of the coin. So he's absolutely correct. There's nothing wrong in his statement. But it's only one side of the coin. And he's made a very, very significant, meaningful statement for poker players. To remember that we must think about logic and we must destroy belief. His entire effort throughout his philosophy was to make people question and use their reason rather than simply listen to the narrative given by the masses. One thing Friedrich Nietzsche misunderstood, or he forgot to mention, which was bound to happen because his statement was based on rationality, logic, intelligence, and the intellect, which are beautiful tools. He had a very expanded mind, but it was not based on meditation, and he had not made the realization, but he made a great contribution to humanity. In fact, one of the greatest contributions of anybody in history. He made man free. But what is man free for? If there is no God, man is free. But that will simply mean that he is capable of doing anything, whether it is good, whether it is bad. And there's nobody to judge him, and there's nobody to forgive him. This freedom will simply be perversion. But there is another side of the coin. And the other side is you remove God and you leave man completely empty. And of course you declare his freedom, but what is the actual purpose? How is he going to use his freedom for creativity, for art, for poetry, for sexuality, for music, for strategy, for love? How is he going to use his creativity? Because the problem with Friedrich Nietzsche and his philosophy, and the reason why he went crazy toward the end of his life, is because he was based from the intellect. He was not aware of meditation. He did not become enlightened. He was one of the most beautiful people and one of my favorite people in history. But he was not aware that meditation was available, as it is to all of us today. That is the other side of the coin. Man is free, and his freedom can only be a joy and blessing if it is rooted in meditation, if it is rooted in self-awareness, if it is rooted in understanding who we are. Now you can take away God. That is perfectly fine. That was a presupposition which never existed. And the one who is yet to unsee that will. But when you remove God, he's been put in a very dangerous situation. Because man is always looking for meaning, because he doesn't understand that poker is not a means to an end. Poker is the end. Poker is the most magnificent game. But man tries to find meaning in everything. So he thinks that poker is about making money. He thinks that poker is about impressing his friends. But it doesn't matter, because poker in and of itself is the most brilliant strategy game that's ever been created. Now, Zen meditation is the other side of the coin, which is not a religion. In fact, Zen has no God. Zen is a set of methods to make the realization. That's what is so beautiful about Zen, because Zen can be completely applicable to poker in all the ideas and all the ways about being unattached and knowing oneself. Zen is a very good science to transform your own consciousness. It is not a religion. It is not founded on any belief. It is absolutely scientific. To bring so much awareness that you cannot commit evil acts. You cannot do bad things to your friends. You don't need to be taught by a man in the sky, because you yourself are sensitive to life, and you are sensitive to other people's feelings, and you love your friends. You love your neighbor. It is not a commandment from some external source, because it is love. It is your essence. It is who you are. And once you know the center of your being, once you know that you are with the cosmos, you are one with life, and that cosmos was not created, it has not been something that can be removed, it always is. From eternity to eternity, once you know your infinity, you know that you are Gautama himself. You know that you are Jesus. And it is impossible to do anything wrong, because you are beautiful. And you can accept yourself and love yourself unconditionally. It was absolutely wrong, because it is impossible to sin. Because you will not do anything that hurts another, because you know yourself. Friedrich Nietzsche was almost completely insane by the end of his life. And he was hospitalized. He was put in a loony bin or mad asylum or mental ward. And people were not bothered about what had happened to such a great man. He had concluded God is dead, but it was a very negative conclusion, because it was very empty. And this freedom was completely meaningless. There was no joy in it. It was only freedom from God, but for what? Now, freedom has two sides, from and for. And the other side was missing, that drove Nietzsche insane. And emptiness always drives people insane. You need some kind of grounding. You need some kind of centering. You need some relationship with existence. God being dead, all your relationship is now finished with existence. But it's not true, because God being dead, you have the opportunity to put your roots in the earth. A tree cannot live without roots, and nor can we. God was non-existential. He was a dream. But it was a good consolation. It was used to fill people's inferiority. But it was a lie. But even though it was a lie, it was repeated thousands and thousands of times for millennia, and it almost looked like a truth. Now, God has been a very good consolation to the people that fear their death. But for people that become aware and expand their mind, they go beyond the old age. They go beyond death. They go beyond darkness. God has become a great consolation to the people who do not want to know themselves, though. To the people who go to church and talk about Jesus Christ, but they don't want to know their oneness. So they use God as a great consolation. But it is a lie. But lies can console you. They can make you feel better. They can make you feel like, well, when I die, it's going to be okay. But you have to understand it. Lies are much sweeter than truth. A lie can never hurt. Buddha once said that truth is bitter in the beginning and very sweet in the end. And lies are sweet in the beginning, but very bitter in the end when they are exposed. There's a very big bitterness in the end. And when we see that we have been deceived by all of our parents, by all of our teachers, by all of the training sites, by all of the leaders, all of the people that we look to in authority, we've constantly been deceived by them. Our frustration brings a very big distrust in the entire society, as if nobody is worthy of trust. It creates a sort of vacuum. So Nietzsche was not completely insane in the last phase of his life. It was more like the very conclusion or synthesis of this very negative approach. An intellect can only be negative. It can argue and criticize and be sarcastic, but it's not able to give any nourishment in the way that meditation and mindfulness is. And Nietzsche could not get any nourishment from his intellect. But the intellect cannot see itself. It is like a knife, but the knife cannot cut itself. So he lost his God, and he lost his consolation. And he became free to go insane, because he did not put his roots in the earth. And it's not only Nietzsche. It cannot be said that it was an accident either. It's many intellectual giants find themselves in madhouses. It's not because they're incorrect with their logics. And it's not only Friedrich Nietzsche. So it cannot be said that it's just an accident that it's only Friedrich Nietzsche that went insane. Because there are so many intellectual giants that find themselves in asylums or end up committing suicide because nobody can live in complete darkness. One needs light and a positive, affirmative experience. Now Nietzsche demolished the lie and created a vacuum in himself and in the other people who followed and realized the truth in what Nietzsche said. But the problem is that if deep down you feel a vacuum, complete emptiness, completely meaningless, it's because of Friedrich Nietzsche. The whole philosophy has grown in the West, and Nietzsche is the founder of this very negative logical approach, which does not see the appreciation of life. It's important to understand that many great giants of the first half of the 20th century, many philosophers were constantly talking about meaninglessness, anguish, suffering, anxiety, dread, fear, etc. So Western philosophy has been called existentialism. But it's not existentialism. It's basically the opposite. It's like the opposite of existentialism, non-existentialism, because it destroys everything that consoled man, which was God. And I agree, the destruction of God was a very good thing. It was very good. Even though it was consoling people's lives and it made them feel better, truth, even though it hurts, is what sets us free. So God, heaven, hell, all of these fictions to console man and tell man that you need to act good right now. We know you're never going to get up in the world. We know you're never going to be a king, but maybe next life or in heaven, just be quiet. These consolations were destroyed. Now, out of the vacuum of existentialism, people talk about meaninglessness. Life has no meaning. It talks about how life has no significance. You are just an accident. Whether you were here or not doesn't matter at all to existence. And these people call their philosophy existentialism. They should call it accidentalism. Now, you are not needed. It's just an accident. On the margin, somehow you have just popped up. God was making you a puppet. And these philosophers, Nietzsche, Jean Paul, they start making you accidental. And there is a tremendous need to make a poker player related to the game in a way where he feels it with his heart. But the roots of mind expansion and going into ourself start in meditation. They start in self-awareness, because poker can be tremendously overflowing with meaning, significance, and blissfulness. Poker can be a fantastic celebration, a birthday every day, a Merry Christmas, a 4th of July with fireworks. But the conclusion of these so-called existentialists is that poker is not necessary, and that poker has no meaning, no significance. Existence is not in need of poker players at all. God is not in need of poker players. So what I would like to do is show poker players that this is not completely true, and there are many methods to expand one's mind. And most of the poker community is completely insane, going to mental game coaches and thinking that a new trick will fix them without going to the root, because they don't want to see the deception that they have played upon themselves. But we know as poker players that that's how we make EV, through our opponents who deceive themselves. So I completely agree with Friedrich Nietzsche as far as God is concerned, absolutely. But I want to complete or elaborate his statement, which he could not do, because he was an awakened being. He was certainly awakened, but he was not enlightened. He was not self-realized. So I will ask the help from Gautama Buddha or Jesus Christ or one of the great masters like Lao Tzu or Ramana Maharshi to help us, so we can look at the ancient scriptures and we can listen and we can discuss the meaning of these scriptures as it pertains to poker in 2024. In fact, parables are absolutely timeless. So the time, whether you are listening today or whether you are listening in 100 years, does not matter. Because truth is eternal. We listened to Jesus Christ 2,000 years ago. And we think that because there is a new master called Eckhart Tolle, that is the only one we should listen to. Well, I love Jesus Christ as well. And I'm not willing to pick one over the other. I think that both masters have something tremendous to offer us. Buddha, 2,500 years ago, didn't even talk about God. Buddha didn't even say that there is no God, because there's no point. Because he's not an atheist. I'm not an atheist. Nor am I a theist. God simply is not there. He is simply a thought in the human mind. And people cannot differentiate their thoughts from reality. They cannot differentiate imagination from reality. So what I can say is that it does not make someone insane when they realize truth. I'm not insane. And you are not insane. If you have awakened and you have not yet become enlightened, you are not insane. You know that your experience is much deeper than what other people are willing to know, what they are willing to admit to themselves. Because it would mean that their entire reality was founded on the stuff that dreams are made of. But of course, we are not so foolish. We're always willing to question ourselves. And I am a witness to this. There's no God, but there's no negativity. In fact, it is the greatest freedom when we are rooted in the totality of God, in truth. That is mind expansion. Now, the ultimate goal is freedom. And unless your freedom becomes awareness in every moment of the day, unless you start thinking about each decision when you are playing the hand rather than trying to memorize previously accumulated tricks, there's going to come a point where your ceiling cannot be higher and you are going to be very frustrated. Poker will feel very meaningless, with no significance, and it will be a means to an end to make money, rather than the way that we first fell in love with poker. Poker is love. So it's important to understand that when we take God or spirituality out, the whole existence seems very soulless. And the life is just like a byproduct, and it's just a combination of parts. So when we die, everything we will leave, it will be nothing. There's no question of it being good or bad. Existence is completely indifferent. It does not care about us. God used to care about us. Now God is removed. There's something very strange that begins to happen, especially for poker players that are looking for methods, and they're going to communities like psychology, and they're looking at mental game coaching, and they're seeing the contradictions, but there's nothing to say because they're looking at authority. These people are the next generation that can expand their mind, but it takes a great deal of intelligence to be able to get out of the mindset that looking at another Pio Solver sim is the way to get better at poker. These people are simply solving the wrong problems. So once you know a certain balance within the game, you will see the negative and the positive. And then you will see the roots that you have in existence. It is the extreme to believe the GTO and just memorizing solutions is the only way. And it is also extreme to think that just hand reading and thinking about what our opponent has and not defensive strategies in case we come across someone who could exploit us is just another extreme, because both of these two sides of the coin need to be synthesized. In Zen, there is a sitting meditation. It is called Zazen, where you sit and you do nothing. Now, religious people, when they talk about Zen or they read Zen, they hear about it, they're very puzzled because they're not talking about anything to do with God from the very beginning. It's very strange to see scriptures and hear people who have no place for God, no place for paradise, no place for hell. It is a very scientific religion. It's not a search based on belief. It's a search based on experience, a way to expand our mind, a way to understand the simultaneous arising nature of strategies that go beyond the cause and effect framework. It is fundamental. And just as science is objectivity based on experiment, Zen and its methods are based on subjectivity, on experience. One science goes outward, another science goes inward. Now, it's been almost an hour, guys. Thank you so much for coming. I love you all very much, and we will speak again soon.